The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Ken Brown speaking. I'm with Transportation Energy Partners, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We have some distinguished speakers from the natural gas industry today who are going to give us an update on some of the great progress they're making in the medium and heavy-duty truck markets. And so we're going to get going as quickly as we can. So thanks for joining us. First, before we begin, a special thanks to our sponsors, Cummins Westport and Westport, for sponsoring today's webinar. You're going to hear, as I think you know, from Charlie Carr from Cummins Westport, Kelly Hawes from Cold Star Solutions, which is runs a fleet of refrigerated trucks that he's going to talk more about, and Mel Ogman from Westport. Before we get going, just a brief background for the benefit of everybody on Transportation Energy Partners. I think, as you know, we work with all of the nation's 90-plus Clean Cities coalitions across the country, and there are many stakeholders in the transportation energy industry. We keep coalitions and stakeholders informed of key policies, programs, funding opportunities, and other developments in the alternative fuels industry. And we educate decision makers, particularly here in Washington, about the importance of advancing markets for alternative fuels and vehicles. In case you don't know, this year's Energy Independence Summit is coming up quickly. It will take place in Washington, D.C. on February 22nd through the 24th. It's a great event. It's really one of the key policy events in the nation that focuses on alternative fuels and vehicles and infrastructure. It's an opportunity to network with Clean Cities coalitions and others in the clean transportation industry. We'll hear presentations from some of the new leaders in Congress, from multiple federal agencies, including the Department of Energy, EPA, Department of Transportation, Defense, Agriculture, and others. And we'll spend a day on Capitol Hill, where teams of folks made up of Clean Cities coalitions and industry stakeholders will meet with various congressional offices and educate them about the great progress that's going on in communities around the country. So I encourage everybody to register for the summit if you're not registered already. And you can go to our website, transportationenergypartners.org, to register for the upcoming summit. It's going to be a great event as usual. And this year we're doing it just a couple blocks from the Capitol at the Washington Court Hotel. Quick thank you. Here are some of the sponsors for this year's summit, and for those of you who are still interested in sponsor opportunities, they're still available. And again, you can find out either through our website or you can contact me at the contact information at the end of the presentation. So hope to see everybody in Washington at the end of February for the summit. And in case you don't know, the Department of Energy is also holding a Clean Cities Program Stakeholders Strategic Planning event on Wednesday, February the 25th here in Washington. And so you can also attend that event while you're in D.C. So you can hit two big events with on the same trip to Washington. So with that, we will now move into our first presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Charlie Carr with Cummins Westport. Charlie?
Thank you, Ken. Can you? Am I coming through all right?
Loud and clear. Perfect.
Terrific. Well, just thanks, Ken, for your opening remarks, and I, for one, am looking very much forward to next month's gathering in Washington. It'll be a good time to discuss the year ahead. But jumping into these slides, as I know that Ken's got the stopwatch going, for the uninitiated, Cummins Westport. Who's Cummins Westport? We are a joint venture, 50-50, between Columbus, Indiana-based Cummins with Westport Innovations in Vancouver, British Columbia. We've been in business since 2001 and have delivered over 50,000 engines in that time frame. And since we've signed a new 10-year agreement in 2012, which covers 6 to 12 liter dedicated natural gas over-the-road engine markets. Next. Here are the factory-built natural gas engines that we manufacture. The ISLG, which began production in 2007, 8.9 liter, and the ISX-12G, which was introduced in August of 2013, and the to-be released 6.7, ISB 6.7, which is in development right now. We're doing engine trials presently. Each of these engines employ, you can go to the next slide, Ken, the same combustion technology, that being the combination of stoichiometric combustion, which is the precise mixture of fuel and air, and that is combined with exhaust gases and ignited with a spark plug. And the resulting exhaust is free of oxygen, which enables the use of a three-way catalyst, which gets us down to those low emission levels. Next slide, Ken. And here's a picture of the three-way catalyst. It's either vertically or horizontally mounted. It's packaged much the same as a muffler in your car. It's good to the life of the vehicle, and takes the place of a diesel particulate filter and selective catalytic reduction systems found on the diesels. Next. Very simply, these natural gas engines don't care whether the fuel is stored in a compressed or liquid state. They receive it as a gas regardless. CNG, LNG, or of course we should have included a little triangle, RNG, for renewable natural gas. We do require a minimum for the ISLG, the 9-liter motor, of 70 psi at the inlet, and for the 12G, a minimum of 60. We have an application engineering bulletin that's listed here, which outlines our fuel quality requirements, and the minimum methane number we require is 75. Next. Where are these engines made? The ISLG in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Parts, service, training, for both these motors are through the Cummins distribution network and qualified OEM dealers. And of course, the natural gas engines are covered by the similar warranty to that of diesel. The 12G is manufactured in Jamestown, New York. And so if anyone is in and around those locations, drop by their impressive facilities. Next. A little more on the 12G, the peak rating of 400 horsepower, 1450 foot-pounds, being used today in line haul, regional P&D, and local delivery. On the vocational side, certainly we're seeing good pickup in the refuse market, particularly front loader and roll-off applications. The engine's good to up to 80,000 pounds gross vehicle weight or any application that sees over 60,000 miles per year. Next. Very quickly, this just illustrates the similar torque curve of the natural gas 12G in yellow to its diesel counterpart in red. Okay, Ken? And of course, one of the key considerations for any application is to get the gearing correct. I will just note for those online here that we have a tool called PowerSpec, which really enables you to tweak the parameters based on the work that you want your vehicle to do and select the right gearing, whether you're looking for fuel economy or a mix of fuel economy and performance. This tool allows you to pick and choose and see what the desired outcomes are. So next, Ken. Similarly with the 9, this has been the workhorse for certainly for transit since it was released in 07. We're in the Type D school bus, the larger school buses, and of course refuse, and we're seeing great uptake in the mixer market as well. It's good to up to 66,000 pound gross vehicle weight or 60,000 miles a year. Next, Ken. Similarly, here's the torque curve of the 9 ISLG versus its diesel counterpart. I won't go into the details for time. Ken? And again, for the 9, there are gear recommendations based on fuel economy and or balance. And once again, you can get that through Cummins-Engines.com/PowerSpec as well. Ken? What are the key differences between natural gas and diesel engines? Well, here they are. We at Cummins Westport use a smaller wastegated turbo than the variable geometry turbo used on the diesel. The cylinder head for the ISLG is a 2 versus 4 valve head. The ignition source, of course, is the main differentiator with spark ignition versus compression for the diesel, and an intake manifold for natural gas engines versus common rail system. The three-way catalyst means you don't require the particulate filter in SCR systems. Lower compression ratio for natural gas, and the primary maintenance cost, of course, is related to the ignition system and the spark plugs. We also require a lower ash oil, which is referenced here with the CES 274 reference number that people should make note of. And of course, we all like to highlight the noise, which is considerably less than that of a diesel, and I think Kelly's going to allude to that, or hopefully he'll allude to that. Next, Ken. Quick snapshot of the maintenance intervals for both the 12G and the ISLG. Again, we try and keep those as similar to diesel as possible. Next, Ken. And I encourage everyone to contact the local Cummins distributor for training, service, parts, and information, any information on the on either of these engines. Ken?
Great. Thank you, Charlie. Oh,
I think there's
there's more.
The remaining slides. This is a snapshot of the availability of the engines in the various applications, And lastly, Ken? The website, CumminsWestport.com, really is a treasure trove of information, videos, walk-arounds of all the engines, and quite simply a great resource for people wanting to know more about both the fuel and the engines and their applications. So with that, I will end my presentation and look forward to questions.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for all your great leadership over many years in this world of alternative fuels, and the great work that your company is doing to advance these technologies across the country, and not just the U.S., but Canada and elsewhere. So thanks very much. And there's more. Here's product brochures. We're now going to hear from Kelly Hawes, who's with Cold Star Solutions, and he's going to talk about his company's decision-making process to transition to natural gas engines, and what went into that decision and how it's going. So thanks, Kelly. The wires are yours.
Great. Thanks a lot, Ken, and happy to take part in this as well. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about our program, I'm very happy to do so. So we'll start with the next slide right away. That first picture shows the first fleet of 10 that we purchased and came into service in March of CNG trucks. But go to the next slide for me. So what I want to talk about first off is making the decision, and there's a lot of people that are trying to get enough information to make the decision. So I can only speak on our project and what I did to get going on this, and hopefully there's a few little nuggets in there that may help somebody else that's trying to make that decision as well. So first off, very quickly, we started looking into the project in May of 2012. In BC, we have a bit of an advantage, I guess, with Fortis BC is our natural gas provider here. And they have an incentive in place which covers off, at the time, it's less now, but at the time it was 75% of the difference between the cost of a diesel truck versus a natural gas truck. So in a Class 8 tractor at that time for us, the difference was $60,000. So Fortis covered off 75% of that. So certainly made the decision a little easier to make, and helped with the return on investment. Timeline being much shorter. However, with that said, knowing what we know now, even if that incentive wasn't in place, I'd still pull the trigger and do this. But certainly when we were trying to make the decision, it made it a lot easier. So, you know, part of our problem was there was no other company in Canada that was doing this yet. So we ended up being the first trucking company to put the 11.9 liter CNG engine into service in a Class 8 truck. So next. Next there, Ken. Hello. Ken?
Yep. You're not.
Oh, can you? There we go. Okay.
Oh, that one.
No. Oh, sorry. Go back one. Sorry, it didn't show up there. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so making the decision, obviously the first challenge that we had was needing a fueling solution. There was no fueling stations on Vancouver Island, which is where these particular 10 trucks were located. And we were able to work out an arrangement with the fuel provider, Fortis, to partner and build a fueling station, which is about 3 blocks away from our warehouse. And then they were able to do that on their site, which I was thrilled about, because then we were able to make it a third-party fueling station so that it would help to put infrastructure in place for anyone, not just us. to do that, we had to guarantee a certain amount of fuel volume going through that station, so hence that's where we ended up having to purchase 10 trucks with the plan to displace 380,000 diesel liters a year. The nice thing is now, at least here on Vancouver, on South Vancouver Island, somebody can just purchase one truck and get going. They don't have to commit to a certain fuel load. So that was a good step for us. The other part that was important for me to making the decision was that our current diesel trucks were Macs, the Mac Pinnacle day cabs. And so being able to have Mac come to the table with a CNG solution was fantastic, because we were able to spec these trucks out exactly the same as our diesel, other than the CNG components, and be able to have a direct comparison to the two modes. Next. So this just gives you a quick overview of the truck itself that we put in place. Obviously the ISX-12. We on these trucks went with a 13-speed manual transmission. If I was at the time when we were doing this, Mac didn't have an automatic or an auto shift solution. But if I was to do trucks again, I would certainly go the automatic. For us, we're a P&D, pickup and delivery service, mainly in Vancouver and Vancouver Island. So we're doing a lot of stop and go. So the automatic transmission would be nice. The downside to the CNG versus the diesel was that the truck had to be 2 feet longer than our regular trucks, which isn't a real big deal, except we have to, all these trucks travel across the BC ferries every day, and they charge us by the foot. So we had to include the extra footage on the ferries as a part of our cost structure. We spend about $3 million a year on ferries, so 2 feet adds up very, very quickly. But the reason we did that is we went with the 245 DG side-mounted tanks, because we run reefers and we're backing in and out of real tight spots. So I was concerned if we put the fuel tanks on the back of the cab, which is obviously an option, that we might be banging into our reefers and stuff. So I opted for the side rail tanks. We get, as far as range there, well, I think I go into it in a little bit, but the range is easily 600 kilometers in downtown traffic conditions on a fuel load. Next. This is just a quick schematic of the fueling station that we put in at Fortis, 2 pumps. If somebody wants to look at that a little more later on, you can blow it up and just get an idea of some of the components that are there. Next. So concerns and factors that we're still working on, obviously getting into this, one of the things that we're going to track is how the trucks will perform in the long term. Right now they're working fantastic. We have no issues whatsoever, but they do the job as well as the diesel trucks, and no issues there. The other concern is taxes. Right now there's no fuel taxes associated to the natural gas, but and the government's not, has not said one way or another whether they're going to start looking at that, but it's one of the things that concerns us, because if they started taxing it, then that's going to come into our savings. However, that's something you want to check with whatever territory you're working in or going to do this, is understanding that part and making sure you put that into your calculations. The other one that always comes up is, how do we market this to our customers without the customer expecting entire savings? Obviously, we're for higher service, so right out of the gate, customers are wanting to know the advantage to them, and obviously there are some advantages, but there are the added costs of the truck. And the fact that we have diesel trucks we still have to still have to bill fuel surcharge. So we're still trying to figure out all of that In the end, though, it's still a very positive thing for the company and a positive step for our customers. Lower costs for sure, and of course being able to say that they're supporting a green fleet is always a positive step. Fueling infrastructure, obviously trying to expand that. Right now we only have the one location. It serves for those 10 trucks, but if we were to add more trucks, we certainly need more fueling locations. So we're looking and working with Fortis at another site in the north part of Vancouver Island. And then I know there's people looking at fueling solutions in the Lower Mainland. If we get those two in place, then we then have the infrastructure to convert our entire fleet. Next. So results. Initially when we put the trucks in service, we started seeing 20% savings right out of the gate. We're now easily seeing 30%. The reason for the difference was first a bit of driver training for sure. Routing was another thing. One of the things in our fuel services agreement with our fuel provider was guaranteeing a certain amount of fuel, or that we burn a certain amount of fuel, and we weren't using the trucks enough on the right routes to do that, so we were still having to pay for that amount of fuel even though we weren't burning it. We're now exceeding that commitment and hence brought up the 30% savings. Maintenance costs and stuff, the fleet has now gone through 2 B services, or full services. Now obviously the trucks are brand new, so they're still under warranty and things, but as far as just your regular maintenance, the only difference is about $50 due to the added cost of the oil. Other than that, everything's the same. In cost-wise, the other part to keep a note of is that we do have to change spark plugs probably every second service, and that's about $350 roughly per truck to do that. But even with that built in and the reduction of other costs, we're still very happy with those results. The drivers love these trucks. At first it took some getting used to, mainly because they're so quiet. The drivers can't hear the engine, so when you're driving down the road and you're used to shifting by the sound of the engine, it was really difficult at first. I know when I drove it for the first time, I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't go any further or go any faster, and I looked down and the RPMs were 4,500 RPMs, and oh yeah, I got to shift. So hence why the auto shift would be nice to solve that problem as well. But they're extremely quiet, and the community feedback, we do a lot of deliveries in downtown and residential areas to grocery stores, and we've got lots of emails and stuff from people saying that they just love the fact that these trucks are so quiet, and has made a big difference when we're doing those deliveries early morning and things like that. So that part's been really good. We have just taken delivery, actually this afternoon, we take delivery of 3 brand new Freightliner M112 8.9 liter CNG straight trucks that are refrigerated boxes, and they'll go into service Friday morning and operating out of our Victoria location as well. So we're excited to get those on and try a different application in CNG. The trucks look great. Unfortunately, I've only seen a quick picture, but I haven't seen them with all the decals on because that's being done right now. Otherwise, I would have included a photo of those. But we're certainly committed to CNG trucks for the fleet in the future. Next. There we go. So that's it for me. The other little thing that I wanted to mention is that that Charlie didn't really allude to is Cummins has a playbook, and that playbook you can get that from them, and it's a step-by-step guide on going through and analyzing your like how you would put these trucks into your application. I wish I had that when I was researching this, because everything that's in there I had to research on my own, and then by the time we had pulled the trigger, I get talking to Charlie and his team and find out that if I had had that, I could have saved myself a lot of time and energy. It's a fantastic resource, not to mention their website with all the other things. And in closing, 30% savings on our fuel costs, right to the bottom line. If you took our fleet of truck, well, even if you take just the 10 that we have in place, that savings puts enough on the bottom line that's equivalent to paying for one CNG truck cash a year. That's huge for me. And the performance of the trucks, we pull 80,000 pounds in GVW going down the road, and no issues whatsoever. So look forward to questions at the end of the summer. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Great presentation, and sounds like you're getting great results. For anybody who's got questions, please just type your questions in the question box on the side of your screen, and we'll take those at the end after we hear from Mel. So our third presentation is going to be from Mel Ogman with Westport, and he's going to talk about Westport's LNG tank systems. Mel, thanks for being here.
Yes, good afternoon. Today's discussion, I will focus on the technology side of things. LNG systems for trucks come in different flavors, and hopefully by the end of the brief presentation I have, you will have a good understanding of what the options might be from the technology side. But before we talk about LNG, I would like to point out a few things. CNG stands for compressed natural gas, and LNG stands for liquefied natural gas. CNG and LNG are simply two different ways natural gas is stored. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. There is no such thing as an LNG engine. Sometimes I hear that in industry, but there's no LNG engine. All engine runs on natural gas. LNG and CNG refers to how the fuel is stored on the truck. LNG, liquefied natural gas, is a cryogenic fluid, which means it is stored at extremely cold temperatures. In Fahrenheit, it is minus 260, so it is extremely cold, and therefore its storage on the truck requires special attention. Hence, there's quite a bit of technology associated with being able to accomplish that. Compressed natural gas is natural gas that's simply compressed, and it is stored at 3,000 psi in Europe and other areas, and 3,600 psi in North America. Next. Westport is very fuel agnostic. We provide engines and fuel systems regardless of whether it's LNG or CNG. What really matters is the application and the environment the truck operates in. In this slide, I'm not going to go through all the details, but there are options for each and every type of engine and or fuel system. Next. Yeah, so just briefly talking about whether you should choose CNG or LNG, assuming that you already made the decision to go natural gas. This is a bit of an analysis, but not that complex. First of all, CNG is good for shorter ranges, and short is a relative term, which means maybe 400 miles, that type of range. Fuel cost, in generally, CNG is cheaper than LNG because LNG is a produced fuel. You start with CNG and then liquefy it, so there's a little bit of additional cost in making LNG out of a CNG. Fueling time is for CNGs two different types. You could have fast fill or slow fill. Slow fill takes multiple hours and usually is good for city buses and or vehicles that come and park overnight. Fast fill, you can fill the truck in 20 minutes or so, but because of the heat generated during the fill process, you cannot fill the tanks you have to its maximum capacity. On the weight side, CNG systems are a little bit more heavier than LNG systems. So if your gross vehicle weight is important for your business, then you need to consider the weight in this one. And also space, CNG systems occupy a larger volume than LNG systems. Now, on the LNG side, if your duty cycle of the fleet is such that you're running the fleet all the time, then LNG would benefit you more. Using LNG, you can pull heavier loads simply because of the system weight becoming less, and definitely you get a longer range. But LNG systems require a little bit more attention in the speccing phase of the truck. Next. Yeah, before I jump into the technologies associated with the LNG systems, just a few words about LNG itself. LNG starts as a very cold liquid, as we mentioned, but by the time you fill your truck, it could either be warm or cold, and depending on whether you have warm LNG or cold LNG available in your region, it has impact on the outcome of your operations. Next. If you happen to have cold LNG in your region, then I should say you are in luck. Cold LNG provides better vehicle range and better hold times. Hold times are important because if you park the truck over a couple of days, over a weekend, you don't want your tank being pressurized and venting out and you losing fuel. Next. Okay, now into the technology side. We've got two types of systems in the LNG side, passive systems and active systems. Now, passive systems basically work by boiling the fuel inside the tank. Active systems work by pumping the fluid in the right pressure. Passive systems can be had either as a module or a system. The module means the equipment sits on the truck and it does not communicate with the engine at all. Whereas if it's a system, there's a direct communication link between the engine and the system, fuel system, so that fuel system knows what the engine is doing. Next. Yeah, so this is the passive module. Heat is pumped into the tank, fuel tank, and fuel tank pressure rises, and the engine basically uses that pressure to operate. Next. In an active system, you try to keep the pressure in the tank as low as possible. You simply take out a little bit of fluid, pressurize it using a pump, and then provide that fuel to the engine. Next. Passive modules versus passive systems. Passive modules have quite a few mechanical components on them, and these mechanical components require maintenance and upkeep and sometimes adjusting. And under certain circumstances, liquid can get into the system and freeze the module, mechanical module. In a passive system, you have electronic controls. Therefore, there is no mechanical components that could cause difficulties and or require upkeep. Next. Shortcomings, as we already discussed, boiling and inside tank pressure. Normally you would want inside the tank pressure to be as low as possible so that you could fuel the truck as fast as possible, and while fueling you don't lose fuel back into the station, and loss of fuel is loss of money. Next. In an active system, you get an increased range because you could use cold fuel, cold LNG. Fueling times become faster. Fueling experience for the driver is similar to diesel. So from those perspectives, cold LNG and active systems create quite a few benefits. Next. In this table, you could look at it once you have the printouts. I tried to compare various types of modules, systems, for warm LNG, cold LNG, and compare them to CNG systems so that in one snapshot you get a better grasp of what might suit your application and or your fleet better. Next. I think that's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any of your questions.
Great. Thanks, Mel. Thanks again to Charlie, Kelly, and Mel. And now we're going to take questions. Again, if you have a question, please type it into the question box. First question we have here is, I think this is for you, Charlie. What type of vehicles will the 6.7 liter engine be used for?
It's currently in field trials right now in the medium-duty truck market, so pickup and delivery, some of the vocational markets, the sweepers, the yard hostlers found at the ports, and certainly school bus. I mentioned that the ISLG is in the larger Type D, and this will certainly bring availability to the smaller Type C school bus market as well as the shuttle buses. So hope that gives a little more clarity.
That's great. And then how about anything on the future of the 15-liter engine? And it says HPDI, which I don't know what that means, but I bet you do.
Yeah, again, that's at the start I mentioned that the agreement that the joint venture, Cummins Westport joint venture operates under is looking at 6 to 12 liters. So I can't comment on that 15-liter. That would be a question for the folks at Cummins.
Gotcha. Here's a question for you, Kelly, which is, do you use CNG or some other fuel to power the refrigeration? Can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yes, absolutely. So with the tractor application, obviously the trailer's got its own fuel source, which is diesel at this point, where we've been talking with Thermo King and Carrier, hoping that eventually they come out with a CNG application for the reefer unit itself, but so far no luck. As far as the 5-ton, the M112 with a 5-ton box and reefer, we've had to put a separate fuel tank, diesel fuel tank, which we use marked diesel for that reefer unit. Now, with that said, we do that anyways. We have even with our diesel trucks, we run 2 separate fuel tanks on board. The reefer can run off the regular engine diesel tank, but that fuel is clear diesel, and the marked diesel, which we're allowed to run for the reefer units, is about 15 cents a liter cheaper. So so we automatically put extra tanks on so we can run our reefers on that. So it wasn't really a change to our operation, but hopefully someday the reefer guys figure it out and we can run CNG for both.
Great. This is another question for you, Kelly. Do you find the trucks run hotter? The questioner says they're getting some complaints about CNG engines running hot and causing mechanical problems resulting from the extra heat. Have you had any issues with that?
I have not. We're finding that they run absolutely fine. Now we're not pulling, I guess the caveat to that is we're not pulling really big hills or anything like that with these, but we haven't had any issues with heat whatsoever. Yeah, no, nothing. So.
And I don't know, Charlie or Mel, if you want to have any comments on that?
No, we're not seeing complaints around the heat, Ken.
Okay, good. This is for Kelly, and then I think also Mel and Charlie, if you have any comments. The question is, what are the lower petroleum prices having any impact on your fuel savings? Start with Kelly and then Mel and Charlie, what you're seeing in the industry as well.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, lower fuel prices are good no matter which fuel you're burning. So I guess if you took it from a percentage basis, instead of 30% savings, right now we might be at 28% or something like that. The thing I like about the natural gas, though, is that commodity doesn't bounce up and down and isn't as volatile as diesel is. As we've seen how quickly diesel has gone down in the last month or so, it can go up just as fast, and it's really hard to react when, you know, when you have to pass that cost on to your customers, and most of our customers need 30 days notice to change. So yeah, they need 30 days notice to change when it's going up, but they don't need 30 days when it's going down. They're calling you right away wondering how fast you can drop your price. So so CNG gets rid of a lot of that volatility. I know, you know what my fuel cost is going to be for the year, give or take a few pennies, and so for pricing to a customer, that's huge. So we still have, you know, 3/4 of our fleet is diesel, so I'm glad the price is going down there too. It still doesn't change my vision or my view of going natural gas.
Great. And can you Kelly, say something about what percentage of your operations costs are fuel, roughly, to give people a sense? I'm assuming it's fairly large.
And ours is a little bit different because BC Ferries is such a huge component of our world. But I would say, well, I know, our fuel cost is at least 20% of our costs. So for a fleet of 45 trucks, it adds up pretty quick.
Yep. Another question for Kelly. Do you perform in-house maintenance? And if so, did you have to make any garage modifications for compliance related to using gaseous?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We don't have our own shop per se, but we do use a mobile mechanic who works specifically for us. So we are in the process of getting him trained up just to understand the systems and stuff. But MAC themselves have taken on the application of looking after these trucks. And the same with our 5 tons that are being, they're Freightliners, and they're the shop that we bought those from, they've modified their world. But it's not as scary as most people think. Both those shops, all they've done, to be honest, is now our climate allows us to do this. Here in Victoria, we don't get any snow or real deep cold, so they are doing the work outside with these trucks. They're covered, but it's an outside application. So that's where our guys are doing it for now. They keep telling me if I buy a few more trucks, then they'll look at modifying their shops and stuff. But they were able to start working on our trucks the day we got them. So we passed that off to them.
Great. This is a question for Charlie. According to the questioner, dealers are passing along a $36,000 upcharge for the ISX 12G and $20,000 for the ISLG. Have you all looked at lowering that charge at all?
I am making a note of those numbers. Those, you know, the pricing for the vehicle is done through the OEM. So what were those numbers again?
The numbers are $36,000 for the ISX 12G and $20,000 for the ISLG.
Okay. I've made a note of that, and I'm not sure where this is coming from, but if that person that posed that question wants to get in touch with me, please email, or if they're going to be at your Independence Summit, I'll certainly be there to discuss that. But yeah, the pricing is done at the OEM level.
Okay, great, thanks. Another question, are there any operational or other cost savings due to the difference in the after treatment between gas and diesel?
I think, it's Kelly, I think if I was to talk about it, that just on the maintenance side of things, it's certainly a lot less that the mechanics have to do as far as, you know, the maintenance on those SCR systems and the particulate filters. We don't have any of that on board. So what I would say is our diesel trucks, we've had lots of problems with those. So as far as downtime goes, we've eliminated that problem. I know the guy who looks after our fleet was thrilled to get rid of those systems off our trucks.
Great. This is for Charlie. Another question about the 6.7. The question is, will it be in the Freightliner custom chassis for step vans and walk-in vans?
Quick answer, TBD.
Wait and see. That's the hot news coming down the pike, huh?
We certainly anticipate a similar type availability to the 9-liter for the 6.7, but certainly there's some work to be done before we release all the OEMs that it's going to be available in. But thanks for the question.
Everybody's excited about what's next. Next question is, when will Freightliner allow the Eaton Ultra Shift behind the 12G?
Soon. Again, I'm making a note of that. And Ken, is there going to be some mechanism for questions to be answered associated with this?
We can, if you want, we can do one of two things. One, we're going to put the slides up on the website, on the Transportation Energy Partners website, so people can have the slides and have all of the speakers' contact information so they can reach out to you directly. And I'm also happy to, pass these questions along to you. Probably the most efficient way is for people to contact you, don't you think?
Yeah.
So we'll do that. So if the slides will be up on our website, and people can feel free to reach out to Charlie, Kelly, and Mel. So question for Kelly, did you have to make extensive changes to your vehicle maintenance system?
No, like I say, that's done by the OEM themselves for doing the maintenance and things. Our mobile mechanic can work on, it's still a truck, so he can work on just about everything there is to do except for the actual natural gas portion of the engine. But other than that, wheel seals, all that stuff is all, we do all that in-house. But the natural gas portion, we run it to the OEM. We're fortunate because it's not far from us, so we can run it down there. But like I say, other than its regular maintenance, so far we've had them in service since March 1st of 2014. We haven't had any issues. So
I have a question, Mel. Can you say a little bit more on this is for a novice like me, about the hot versus the cold fuel and what would make cold fuel available versus hot fuel, why it's different in different places?
Yeah, it all depends on the fuel provider. Cold fuel has measurable benefits to the end user simply because liquid being colder is denser. So in the same volume you store more energy. And therefore you get more range in your vehicle. Usually cold fuels create difficulties in passive systems because they are cold, and remember, you build the pressure inside the tank, so it takes a while for pressure to build. For that reason, fuel providers provide cold or warm fuel depending on the station they open up.
Gotcha. And could somebody speak, I guess either Charlie or Mel, on the pros and cons of converting an existing diesel truck to CNG or LNG versus the purchase of a new CNG or LNG truck?
Maybe I can.
Mel, do you want to have a run at that one?
Yeah, sure. It is possible to convert older trucks to run on natural gas, and there are two ways of doing this. If you are doing a complete engine overhaul, then you have an opportunity to change the head, etc., and make that engine run on 100% natural gas. Alternative, cheaper, easier way of benefiting a little bit is converting the engine to be dual fuel, meaning it runs on a mixture of diesel and natural gas. The good and bad thing about that approach is you use between 30 to 50% natural gas, rest is diesel. So if it's a complete CNG engine, of course you're using 100% natural gas. So it depends on the cost of converting and available fuel in the region. The other point to remember is emission requirements. New trucks have to live up to emission requirements that are way more stringent than older trucks. So it is not possible to buy a new truck and a new diesel truck and then switch it to dual fuel, because that would not meet the new truck emission requirements.
Great. Kelly, a question for you. After you got assistance from Fortis for the truck purchases, were there any other government funding or incentives available for the additional cost, or did you just finance that on your own?
Yeah, there wasn't anything else available. However, we're starting to play around with some possibilities of some other incentives through the government, but at this time, no, there's nothing. But what I will say is that the incentive really helped, because when you're trying to finance rolling stock through your bank, they don't like it as much, so they say there's a higher risk, so they charge a higher interest rate. In this particular case, because we had equity put to in $45,000 per truck, I was able to go back to my bank and say, okay, well, we've got all this equity going into these brand new trucks. The risk level is lower. They agreed. I said, okay, so let's talk interest rates. And we were able to get an extra 1% off our normal interest rate. So that was helpful as well. But I do think that people need to be exploring with their, particular governments or, that sort of thing, any opportunity for incentives, and keep pressuring the right people. You keep the fuel taxes, off of this, or at least as low as possible, and then look for those incentives.
That's great. Well, I think we're going to stop there. I want to thank our presenters, Charlie Carr with Cummins Westport, Mel Ogman with Westport, and Kelly Haas. We really appreciate your taking time out of your busy schedule with Cold Star Solutions to let us know how this stuff is working on the roads of Northwest Canada. Or maybe it's Southwest Canada, but it's definitely west. But
I am willing to answer any emails direct too. Like, I'll get back to people as fast as I can. That sort of stuff. More than happy to do that.
Great. So we'll make sure people's contact information is up on the Transportation Energy Partners website. Thanks to everybody out there for all the great questions and for taking time to be with us today. If you haven't signed up for the Energy Independence Summit, please go to the transportationenergypartners.org and click register, and make sure you register right away. It's going to be a great event. Lots of good presenters, and all the key leaders in the U.S. and Canada on alternative fuels issues will all be at the summit this year. So thanks again to everybody, and we will look forward to speaking with you next time. And thanks again, Charlie, Kelly, and Mel. We really appreciate it. Goodbye, everybody.